Hello my friends, welcome to the channel. I have how to build a PC step by step. So stick around and I'll teach you how to do it. Alright, we're going to build an AMD computer today. For that computer, we're going to use a Ryzen 5 3600X. We're going to cool it with an ID coolant radiator that ID coolant has with RGB lights. It's a great radiator. The motherboard that we're going to use is going to be the X570 motherboard. We're going to also build this computer on this Thermaltake case, the B250 Thermaltake. We're going to power it up with the EVGA 600 watts. And we're also going to use a solid state drive, an M.2 from XPG to give that operation system a go. We're going to use a graphics card, a GeForce 1070 graphics card. We're also going to use 16 gigabytes of memory from the same XPG, is all RGB. And we have a kit from Habit that has a keyboard, a mouse, and a mouse pad. It's all RGB. We're also going to use this Biotech monitor. It's a 34-inch curved Biotech monitor with 100 Hertz refresh rate. And you're also going to be able to play with 100 frames per second with this monitor. So let's go to the top view. Let's start building this computer. And without further ado, let's start opening this motherboard and let's begin. Alright, the first thing we're going to do is unbox this MPG X570 Gaming Plus and also the Ryzen 5 3600X. So let's unbox these items. Alright, now that we have these items unboxed, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to install the CPU. This is going to be this Ryzen 5 3600X. This Ryzen is got 6 core 12 threads, and this is the first thing we're going to do. Let's take this CPU out of this plastic cover. Alright, here we got the Ryzen 5 3600X. You see this little arrow right here? We're going to align this arrow with this other alignment that we have here. It's another white dot or white arrow, and what we're going to do is we're going to align those. We're going to align this one with that one. So first we're going to take this lever up, we're going to leave it up, and we're going to try to take this CPU and align it with that arrow and drop it. It should be able to fall in. Don't pressure, don't make any pressure to it. It will just drop in by itself. Just move it around until it comes down. See, there you go, it drops in. Now that it drops in, you can kind of wiggle it around and you'll see that it doesn't move, that it's just set properly in there. We close this lever down and that's it. That's the way we install the CPU in this motherboard. Alright, to keep this CPU cool, we're going to use this ID coolant radiator. Let's unbox these items, see what we have. Okay, now let's get ready to install the radiator. This is that dot that I was talking about, the one that you align with the arrow that you have on the CPU. Once we got that out of the way, we're going to take these two brackets out. These brackets are holding the back plate so it doesn't fall down. Now we take this out and we install the radiator where these brackets were. Let's speed this process. Now that we have taken these brackets out, don't lift the motherboard out of the box, because if you lift it up, the bracket is going to fall down and you don't want that to happen. You just want that to be there in place, so don't lift the motherboard up. Alright, once we have done that, we're going to look for these brackets that came on the kit on the box with the refrigerator, and we're going to align it in the way we want to install them. So I want to put it vertical so I don't draw more heat to the GPU. Some people like to do it horizontally. I don't usually recommend that because you're going to throw heat to the GPU and you're going to cause some overheating problems with it. We're going to use these risers, but be careful because if you don't use a screw to kind of hold them in place, they're going to fall. So let's get a screw down and let's put the screw in while we have this riser in. So I'm going to go ahead and speed this process up, and we'll be back once I have installed these brackets. Alright, now that we have that installed, we're going to start by cleaning the CPU with alcohol, and we're going to apply the thermal paste that we need. Now let's start by cleaning the CPU. We're going to use alcohol at 91%. What we're going to use this alcohol is to clean the CPU. You don't want alcohol that has too much water in it, so always try to get alcohol that it's at least 91%. Alright, so now once we have that, we're going to start cleaning the CPU. We're going to clean it real good. We're going to take those fingerprints, that oil that we have introduced to it, so that the thermal paste does a better job. Clean it real well, clean it nice, and once you have cleaned it, you'll see how quick it dries up. It's because it doesn't have any water in it. It's all alcohol. The thermal paste we're going to use is going to be this Thermaltake G7. We're going to apply a line. We're not going to use the same dot as we use regularly. A line, and once we do that, we're going to install the radiator. We're going to align it with the holes, and we're going to tighten them up. Alright, now that we have tied that up, what we have left is this cable that we're going to plug once we have this inner case. Now the next step we have is to install the memories. We're going to use this XPG Spectrix. This is a kit of 8 gigabytes times 2. It's a 16 gigabytes. We have MSI lights control and everything we need. So let's go ahead and unbox this item. Okay, now let's turn this around. Let's see where we're going to install the memories. We're going to use these 4 slots, but we're not going to use them all. We're going to use just the 2 that will do dual memory. So once we see there's this little diagram right here that will tell you which ones are going to be for dual memory. So it's going to be the second from the CPU and the 4th one from the CPU. So now let's go ahead and install this one. You see this little notch right here? You're gonna have to align that with a little notch that bracket has. So once you align that, you kind of just let it go and press hard until you hear it snap. And don't worry about pressing it too hard, because you really need to get it in there. You need to get it to snap into it. So once you install that, you go ahead and get the second one, and again you look at the notch and align it, open them up and install it. Press it with confidence and press it all the way down until you hit that snap on both sizes of the memory. Once we have installed that, the next step is going to be to install that M.2, that SSD that I have for you, and it's going to be the same XPG brand from Spectrix, and we're going to use this M.2 that has RGB lights on it. So let's go ahead and unbox this item and see what we have. Okay, now that we have that M.2 ready, what we're going to do is we're going to find that M.2 spot that we're going to put it in. We're going to use this one, and we're going to introduce it in a 45-degree angle. That's the way you introduce this kind of M.2s. Once you do that, you look for your magnetic screw and you screw it in the hole that we have placed or stand. So now let's screw this in, and that will be it. That's all it takes to install an M.2. Don't worry about when you bend it down, it's completely normal, because you install it at 45 degree is because you have some springs that just make it then you could get a lot more connection in it. Now this motherboard has this heatsink, but we're not going to use that because it's going to cover our RGB, and that's the ones that we need. You know, RGB is on the M.2 and RGB is on the memory. You know, more lights, a better thing. So now let's open up this case. This is the case we're going to use for this build. It's a Thermaltake B250, and let's open this up. Let's see what we have on this box. Let's go for this fast view and open this box. Okay, my friends, on our motherboard box we got this shield that we're gonna have to install in this case. The thing is that sometimes they're really sharp, they can cut you, so be careful and just press it in so you can hear a snap on your case, and that's it, it's installed. Then after that you just get your motherboard and you align it with this IO shield. Just align it with it. Be really careful and just align it with the shield and align it with the holes that we have, or stands. You do it really carefully, you align it, and once you have everything aligned and everything set, then you can start thinking about getting the screws and screw your motherboard into the case. So let's see, everything seems to be okay, everything seems to be aligned. Now let's go ahead and start screwing this motherboard into this case. What we do is we get our screws, we get that magnetic screwdriver that we had before, and we just start screwing everything in, you know, get every screw in there and tighten it up as good as we can. Now we have a few screws that we have to set here, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do this and come back after I install them all. Alright, now that we have installed every screw, we can lift our case for the first time, and the motherboard won't fall out. So it's beginning to look more like a PC now. So now you have to start to look at where your cables are gonna go. This is the IO shield that I was talking about. It has all the information of the USBs and every connection that you have to your motherboard. So it's more now a time to kind of figure out where all the cables are going to go, how you're going to route them out, and which is going to be the next step forward. So now that we have this motherboard installed, let's go ahead and get the cables that we need and start aligning them with the connectors that we're going to use. Get them as close as we can. The cables we're going to use is this kit, is a red kit that we bought, and let's unbox this item. Let's see what we have. Alright, now that we have routed our cables through the holes closest to the pins that we're going to use, we're going to start installing the USBs and the power connectors for this motherboard. Now let's start with this USB 3 connector. We're going to install it here at the bottom of this motherboard. Now if it's too complicated or too hard for you, this motherboard has a second USB 3 connector to its side. You could always use that one instead of this one. After we install this, we're going to go ahead and install all our power connectors and our USB cables. We're all going to find those connectors at the bottom of the board, so this is the best time to install them where we have a lot of space and we don't have our GPU installed or Wi-Fi 6 card installed. So this is the best time to go ahead and install the audio jack that you will find at the back of this motherboard. This is the best time to install it. Now that we have that, we're going to install this 24-pin cable. We're going to align it and press hard on it until you hear it snap, and that's it. That's the way you connect them. Now this is the way I routed all the cables out. You see how I stacked them all together? It's going to be easier for me to connect them at the end. Remember, all these red cables are just extensions of the cables that we're going to use from our power supply unit. Now this card you see here is the one that you connect all the fans to it, and then you connect this to the motherboard. Simple as that. So you connect all the fans to this one and you connect this to the motherboard. This is the plate that I was talking about, that if you lift your motherboard it will fall off. And this is how the cables came out. This is the front part of it. We have everything connected, everything installed, the USBs at the bottom, the USB 3, the audio, and also the power buttons that comes from the front of our case. You can see our 24-pin cable and our CPU cable on the top. Also our cables that connect to the fan and the CPU fan. This little cable that you see here is the one that you connect to the Wi-Fi car 6. So everything is connected. You just make sure that you haven't missed anything, that you connected every cable that needs to be connected. Now after we do that, we're going to install the PSU, the power supply unit. We're going to use this EVGA power supply unit, this 600 watt, and it's going to be enough to give power to the whole computer, the CPU and the GPU. So what we're going to do is we're going to fast forward, we're going to do a fast view on this and install this unit. Alright, that's the way we installed the unit. Now that we have that unit installed, we're going to go ahead and separate the cables that we're going to use to connect to the computer. We have all these cables here, and even though they could be a little bit overwhelming, they're pretty simple. They have labels that could tell you which ones do you need. So let's start getting the cables that we need for the 24 pin, the GPU and the CPU. Alright, so let's get this thing. This is the 24 pin cable that we're going to use. We're going to put it aside. We're going to look for the other ones. Now this cable that we have here, this is going to be the GPU cable. We're going to put that one aside. We're going to use that. This one over here, it's going to be our SATA cables to connect for the hard drives. We're going to use them. Also we have another set of, this is the one for the CPU. We're going to use this cable for the CPU. We're going to use that one as well, so put that aside. And this other set of cables that we have left, it's another set of SATAs that we could use for more hard drives or anything else that we need on the computer. We're not going to use those right now, so we're just going to set them aside, put them in this hole here, you know, get them out of the way. We're not going to use them. Now that we have got that out of the way, we're going to start connecting the cables that we have here. See how it says CPU? This one is the one you connect to the CPU cable or the CPU extension. You just kind of go ahead and align them and press them together, you know, press them hard until you hear them snap. This is going to be your CPU cable, and that's it. That's the one that's going to give power to the CPU. We're going to go ahead and put that aside and look for the other cables that we need. We're going to install the 24 pin next, so we're going to look for the 24 pin cable and also the 24 pin extension to connect them. Here's the 24 pin cable right here, and let's look for that 24 pin extension. Let's get that out of the way. This is the 24 pin extension. Now the thing that you do is you align those 24 pin cables to this extension. It has a little kind of guide that will guide you through it, and you can align them easier. Just go ahead and align them and just press them in. Sometimes they could, you know, get disassembled because it's 20 plus another 4 pins, but then again you just put them together and that's it. Alright, let's get this out of the way. let's get this here. Now this is the GPU cable that we're going to use. This GPU cable, we're going to connect it to this one here. Now you see that we have two of these cables here, two PSI Express. Now the thing is that those are used for SLI, so we're only going to use one. The other one we're just going to leave it there in case we're ever going to use another GPU or we're going to use an SLI bridge. See, this is the other cable. We're just going to leave it there. It's not going to do anything, and it's just for a future graphics card if you ever get it. Now let's get this out of the way. Let's get this cable out of there. Now remember those SATA cables that I was telling you about? This little cable right here, this cable connects to the SATA and it will power up all the fans. These SATA cables that we have here. So we have three. We're gonna use two for the hard drives, and we're gonna use the other one to connect this cable, this hub cable that will give power to all the fans. Pretty simple, just connect it and that's it. Now that we got that connected, we have this little cable here that comes from the front panel. This cable is the reset cable from the reset button that comes from the front panel. You connect it here to this controller, and this is the one that's going to be allowing you to control all the fans from your front panel. And that's pretty much it. Everything is connected and everything is good. Now what we got to do is we got to put everything in this hole. We got to get all these cables nice and neat and put them in there, and that's it. That concludes the installation of the cables. We're gonna go ahead and go on a time lapse while I do this and put all these cables in there and connect the hard drives. So enjoy this time lapse. Our next step is going to be to install the Wi-Fi 6 card. This is a Wi-Fi 6 card from Ziggy Loud. We're going to unbox this one and we're going to install it. So let's go ahead and see what it has in the box. Well, right now we're back to the top view. We're going to install this Wi-Fi 6 card. What we're going to do is let's get this cable out of the way. We're going to install it in this PCI Express lane here. We're going to align it and we're just going to press it in until we feel it that it goes in. Once we have done that, we're going to go ahead and screw this card to our chassis and we're going to connect it. So let's go ahead and screw this one in. And once we get that screw, we're going to connect this cable that we connected to the USB prior, and we're just going to align this pin with this card. Now make sure you align them properly because it's really small and it's really tricky. It has like an L shape kind of alignment. So let's go ahead and press it in. Be careful, don't press it too hard, you'll break your bracket. Let's give it another try. Align them and press it in. There we go. Now it went in, and that's it. This will complete the installation of the Wi-Fi 6 card. All the cable you have left, you can just go ahead and put it in the hole that you have nearest to the cable, kind of like hide it in there, stick it in there so that it kind of looks like it's coming out of that particularly hole. It looks a lot better instead of that cable just being around. Alright, so that's it. This is the way you install the Wi-Fi 6 card. Pretty simple. Now we're going to install the GPU, the most important part for those gamers and designers. But first, let's go ahead and install this SATA cable that we left behind to demonstrate how you connect them. They have this little metal bracket that you just align with them and you just press until you hear that click. Now this cable that you have here is the GPU cable. Let's go ahead and install the GPU. The GPU that we're going to use is this MSI GeForce 1070. This is the graphics card that we're going to use. We're going to go ahead and install it and see how it works with this PC. I know there's a lot of graphics card out there. You know, there's the 3080 that just came out. But for the use that I'm going to give to this computer, this 1070 is just going to be enough. I'm going to use it for games, from editing and some designing, so it's just going to be enough. And if I need more power, I'll just upgrade it. It's just going to be one thing that I need to upgrade, because everything else that I have on this system is up to date. So that's it. You just screw that down and you plug this extension cable that we connected earlier to this GPU. Now be careful, don't do too much force into it because you might break it. So just hold the GPU, hold the bracket in place and connect it. Simple as that. Right, once we have connected that cable, we just go and inspect that everything was connected right, that everything it's where it's supposed to, that is secure. And we just put the last thing, that is this bracket that will hold everything in place, and it will just give more support for that graphics card. Alright, so let's go ahead and align it. Let's get it in where it's supposed to be, and let's screw it down. Let's screw it to the chassis. You know, just once we get this screw in, the computer is pretty much done. It's pretty much built. The only thing left to do is connect the antennas for the Wi-Fi 6, which is going to be these two antennas right here. Each antenna has a signal purpose. One's for the 5G signal, the other one's for the 2.4 megahertz signal. These antennas also are used for the Bluetooth signal, and that way you can connect everything you need, you know, like controls, headphones, and everything that you need to use through the Bluetooth signal. So it comes really handy. Once we connect this, you call it bonnet ears or these antennas, that's it. Your Wi-Fi is ready to go and everything is set. You just reassure that everything was connected right once again, that you haven't missed anything, and that everything is where it's supposed to be. Alright, I'll just give you one more look here. This is good. Over here it's everything connected. On the top right here, this top is the fan for the CPU, and on the bottom is the controller for the other three fans. And that's pretty much it. Just make sure everything's connected properly and everything is set to where it's supposed to be. And there you go. That's the end of your PC build. Let's turn it on. Alright, we're done with this build. The only thing we got left to do is to turn that button on and see if it goes into the BIOS. And if it goes into the BIOS, that means that we installed everything the way it was supposed to. So let's turn that button on and let's see what happens. Remember to hit that delete button so you can go straight into the BIOS. So let's go ahead and do that. Keep hitting that delete button to go straight into the BIOS. And if it goes into the BIOS, that means it works. If it doesn't, that means you gotta check what you did and if you did anything wrong. Alright, it went into the BIOS. That means that whatever we installed, it was recognized and it was working properly. The only thing left we gotta do is install the operating system and put it on our desk, and we have a brand new computer. So that concludes this build. If you like this video, if you like this content, subscribe, hit like, and also hit that bell for the new upcoming videos. I'll be seeing you in the next video.